Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week we are looking at why your inner child may be fearful and scared. You'll learn how to spot the telltale signs that your fearful inner child is running your life and what you can do to break through these feelings of fear and anxiety. Okay, David, so for our new listeners, let's just do a quick review on what we mean by the inner child.
Well, the label the inner child is like what I like to give to the part of your mind that a lot of people think of as their subconscious mind or maybe their ego. And it's a part of your mind that was developed and kind of frozen in your childhood. The relevant time span for me working with clients is between the ages of roughly 6 years old and 9 years old. And this is a time in your life when something was happening that you couldn't come to find a resolution or an understanding. It could be some form of dysfunctionality at home, in your family, with your parents, siblings, grandparents. Could be at school, bullying, something like that. And something was happening to you when you were a child. And you said the magic word that I call the vow, V-O-W. You turned what was happening to yourself and you said, there must be something wrong with me. There's something missing in me. And from that vow then becomes the three lies. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable. And so if you've ever said that to yourself in your self-talk, then that part of your mind is very active. And this life lesson is to help you to understand that the language of the inner child is through emotions.
So are you saying that that part of our mind, when we first had those experiences in our early years and we were emotionally, mentally destabilized because we didn't know what was going on, that self-blame and then the belief that the origin of that belief that we weren't good enough, that we couldn't cope, that we were lovable, that was what created the fearful inner child within us?
Yes, and so this goes right back down to the fundamental teachings of Wu Wei Wisdom. So let me give you the teachings for those of you who haven't heard. For those of you who have heard, think about it deeply. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim of them. And that is very important because I'm not saying you shouldn't create emotions. I am not saying emotions are wrong or bad or evil. What I am saying is every emotion that you experience in your body, whether that's a tightness in your chest, butterflies in your stomach, sweaty palms, all of the above, and you want to put a label on it, such as anxiousness, fear, scared, stress, whatever label you want to put on it. I prefer to put the label, the red light feeling. That is coming from a belief, a perception, and then you're creating the emotion. So the emotions are always the consequence of a belief or a perception. And so to answer your question, yes, when you were a child, you were going through something that you couldn't understand. You couldn't come to terms with. You couldn't sort out. And so the emotions will be a normal response for a child to try and get attention, to try and get things to change and to alter.
And so, David, this is why, even though these are childhood experiences, which are, I guess, the origin of this problem, happened many decades ago for most people, the emotions we're experiencing now, the fear or scared or anxiety, whatever label you want to give it, those emotions aren't happening because we've somehow been physically or mentally damaged by our childhood experiences, whether it was something huge like abuse or something very subtle and pervasive happening, like we were ignored or deprioritized compared to our siblings. The problem is now not what happened, it's the fact we're holding on to the belief that we're not good enough, we're not lovable, we're not going to be able to cope with what life throws at us, the world's a dangerous place, people are against us, all those sort of beliefs. That now, as an adult, is the fuel on the fire which creates our red light feelings of being scared, anxious, fearful.
That's right, Alex. I would go even farther. The concept that you're damaged or damaged goods or there's something wrong with you or there's something missing in you is totally and utterly wrong. If you have that thought inside, that belief, that thought is what's defining your perception, your view of life. And that belief is the belief that you developed in childhood, and it's kind of frozen in time. I like what the Taoist says, like the kernel in the middle of the nut. So although you may be successful in other areas of your life, business and whatever, you have this kind of nut right in the center, and it's around your view, normally about yourself, normally about what people think about you, normally on the three lies, which we talk about so much in our teachings, because simply they don't make sense. If you've ever said to yourself, I am not good enough, if you take that statement apart, it really makes no sense at all. I can't cope. My goodness, you are a coping machine. You've done nothing but cope all through your life. I almost want to say, how dare you doubt your ability to cope? Stop it. This is nonsense. And I am unlovable, or I am not worthy. This hits right at the heart of your spirituality, your birthright. And so this is why this is so important to understand. Until you get down to the beliefs and understand that even though the emotions are intense, powerful, they are the consequence. They are the outcome for what you believe and what you think. And normally, when you're experiencing, if you do experience those intense emotions that Alex mentioned at the beginning, fear, anxiety, depression, this is the part of your mind that really needs your attention and help, because it's stuck. And that's why I love the metaphor, the idea of an inner child. It's like an inner child stuck in a cold, damp, dark, dank cellar. And we have to go down and help it to come out and find a path back into the light.
And of course, David, this fearful inner child, for some people, it can be really obvious and almost like run all aspects of their life. Like they experience red light emotional feelings of stress, anxiety, fear in, to do with their work, to do with their family, to do with their relationships, to do with their personal health. Worst case scenario thinking, playing small, sacrificing their own needs. Or the fearful inner child can rear its head in only certain aspects. So they can be very kind of easy, very competent, very authentic and balanced at work. But when it comes to their relationships, they play small, or they don't put boundaries in place, or they make inauthentic choices.
And the reason for that, Alex, is what we call in our model the emotional pendulum. So if you do not agree with what I said, you are the creator of your emotions, totally natural and totally normal, make us human beings, emotions are wonderful, but you create them. If you don't agree with that, then you're grounding your life in your decision making in your emotions. So you create your emotions, you ignore the belief that created the emotions. And you start at step 2, the emotions. And then, as Alex says, now you're on the emotional pendulum. So you can now swing to one side and you can think negatively about yourself. Relationships never work for me. I can't cope. I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. Nobody will ever like me. I'm very concerned with what other people think about me. I have to look out for myself for validation. We've done so many teachings on all of this subject. Or you swing to the other side. I have to be perfect. I have to be better than anyone else. I have to be driven. I have to work too hard. I have to work harder than anybody else. I have to constantly proving myself. I have to overperform. I have to prove to somebody that I'm better than them. So those are the two extremes. And what I find is you're either stuck in one of those extremes, or for a lot of my clients, you will swing from one to another. 1 minute you're trying to be perfect, and then almost in the next breath, you'll say to yourself, it's because I'm not good enough. And you're on this pendulum swinging, and this is the inner child is totally lost. No one's listening to it. No one's addressing or trying to resolve their issue. It's like, imagine a physical child. Imagine your child, your physical child, came home from school one day and said, Mummy, Daddy, I'm not good enough. You wouldn't rush to bed and put your headers under the duvet and say, oh my God, I'm ruined. You'd ask it, well, why, son? Why? Why do you think that? Where did that come from? You would try and resolve the belief. Even if they were crying and upset and distraught, you would comfort the emotion. As quick as you can, you would go through the emotion and go to the belief, the cause, what created that thought and that emotion. And that's what we have to do with our inner child, Alex. We have to go and work with her. And she's a beautiful child. And she is so confused about her role. Does she have to be strong? Does she have to stand up? Does she have to prove herself constantly? Or can she be soft? Can somebody else step in like an emotional fairy godmother and give her a big hug and wrap her in cotton wool when something is happening she doesn't like? Mm. And nobody can do all of those things. So she's constantly striving and looking.
And so what you've just described there, David, that acknowledging the emotions, comforting ourselves through our self-talk, comforting that part of our mind, our inner child, but then questioning the origin, what is the thinking behind this emotion and what is the belief behind the thought, that golden thread process technique that you use with all your clients. So that's the reparenting work that we need to do to bring our fearful inner child, to bring our inner child's logic back into an authentic, balanced view of ourselves and the world and our own value and our ability to cope. And then once we've done that, the emotions, the red light emotions, disappear. Absolutely. It's like they dissolve.
Absolutely.
Once we correct the belief.
And this is what people don't understand. They say it can't be that easy. And believe me, this is not easy. The concept is simple, but you have to do quite a lot of work. And as Alex said, you have to go down the golden thread. You start at the emotion, the self-inquiry. We've done many teachings on the golden thread, asking yourself, why have I created that emotion? What is the reason? And this is the pathway that leads to the inner child. And the inner child will give you one of the three lies. Again, if you've ever said it to yourself, your inner child is active. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable. And under that is, there's something missing in me. There's something wrong with me. And that's where it needs the help. Now, the inner child will then use the emotions in two ways. One, to attract attention. That's part of the pendulum. And then one, to repel attention. It will push you away because It doesn't want to be exposed. It doesn't want to be shown up. It doesn't want to be what we call CCJ, criticized, compared, or be judgmental. So it will use the emotional pendulum to block you. And this is one of the things when I work with a client, they get stuck in this swinging of the pendulum. 1 minute they can be crying, and the next minute they can stick out the chest and basically tell you to go and do one. And so the child can swing from one extreme to the other.
And I think, David, a really important point here is that what we have to be so careful with in terms of not making this situation worse, not almost playing to the imbalanced beliefs of the inner child in this situation, is that we should not chastise ourselves. No. And we should show up for our inner child, because not only is our inner child holding on to these false beliefs, which ultimately create the red light emotions, but every time our inner child gives us that cry for help through our red light emotions, every time we don't show up for it, every time we run away, every time we avoid, every time we chastise, our inner child loses trust in that adult parent part of ourselves, that wiser, authentic part of ourselves which should be showing up. And that adds even more fuel to the fire of, well, if I can't rely on myself, if you're pulling the duvet over your head, if you're avoiding me, if you're criticizing me and saying, oh, how stupid am I for having all these emotions, it just inflames the inner child even more.
And this is why I say it's simple but not easy. Because when you're doing the golden thread and the reparenting, you have to be a different parent to what you received. Because when you go down that golden thread, the resistance you'll meet is, it's not fair, it's unjust, it shouldn't have happened to me. And now you have to give it much better understanding and teachings than your parents, your physical parents, could ever give to you. You have to understand and give yourself really honest, truthful, spiritual reparenting, and that will make the change. Because if you don't, as Alex has just explained, you break that trust with yourself. And this sounds very strange, but trusting yourself, believing in yourself, not doubting yourself, is very important essence of this work.
And so, David, we've done so many long form teachings on reparenting work, reparenting techniques, all the kind of questions like, how can I reparent myself well now if I wasn't parented well when I was younger? Where do I get the skills from? We've got such a huge back catalogue of teachings for you to help you with this subject. And I will put a link to those in the show notes to help you with this teaching. But ultimately, David, if we do this work, we can bring our inner child back into a balance.
Yes, Alex, the essence of this life lesson is you are the creator of your emotions, not the victim. This is what clients say to me regularly. When I ask them that, they say, I've been watching your videos and just need some help on a few things. Great. I said, before we start, can I ask you, do you agree that you are the creator of your emotions? And they go, yes, but. And there should be no but in there. The last client I spoke to said, you see what they said? Intellectually, I agree. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what else have you got except your intellect? They said, my emotions. Yeah. I said, but you create those. Yeah. And so the first step is to really meditate and think about nothing wrong with emotions. Emotions make us human beings. They're wonderful. The emotion of love that you create, fantastic. Confidence, happiness, joy. In the right way, fear, anxiety can be a good thing. but you are creating it. Then once you get that straight, then you can really help your inner child, because you're not sent off your track when the inner child creates the emotions. You can look through the emotion and see this beautiful inner child, which is you at the age of around 6, 7, 8, 9, crying out for help.
Thank you, David. That's wonderful. And like I said, please do check out the show notes for our huge back catalogue on inner child work and inner child parenting that will help you with this subject. I do hope this teaching has helped you. Please do let us know and perhaps share it with someone else who you think it may also benefit. David works every week with clients all over the world via Zoom video call. And if you're interested in learning more about David's one-to-one consultations on exactly the sort of issues we've talked about today, please also check out the link in the show notes. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new long-form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you to enjoy. So do subscribe. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.